Remember to like, subscribe, share, and consider donating, please, to keep this channel going. Links are below. It really does make a difference. Thank you. If you have any true scary stories you'd like to submit, the email is in the description below. What if your peaceful camping trip turned into a nightmare? 3 teenagers in Benzie County, Michigan experienced just that when encountering something that shouldn't exist. Their dog's sudden aggression was only the beginning. The following is a continuation and a recap of where we left off in our teen summer camping story and their encounter with the Dogman. See the previous link below if you missed the first episode. What happens when you try to tell others about something that shouldn't exist? Mike, Alex, and Danny were about to find out. The next day, still shaken from their terrifying encounter, the 3 teens gathered with their closest friends. They hoped for support and understanding and maybe even some answers. Instead, they were met with raised eyebrows and skeptical looks. "Come on, guys," Mike started, his voice quivering slightly. "We're not making this up. We saw something out there bigger than any animal. We're talking apex predator." Alex chimed in, describing the eerie howl and the massive dog-like creature that stood on 2 legs. Danny nodded along, adding details about the bipedal tracks that they found circling their campsite. Their friends exchanged glances, barely containing their amusement. "Dude, you guys were probably just scared of the dark," one friend snickered. "Or maybe you ate some weird shrooms." The laughter that followed cut deep. The teens felt a mix of frustration and embarrassment wash over them. They'd hoped their friends would believe them, maybe even help them make sense of what happened. Instead, they felt isolated and dismissed. "Look," Danny said, his voice rising, "we know what we saw. It wasn't just some bear or trick of the light, and we don't use shrooms. Something was out there." But their protests fell on deaf ears. Their friends continued to joke, suggesting they'd watched too many horror movies or let their imaginations run wild. The more the teens insisted, the more their friends seemed to pull away, clearly uncomfortable with the idea that something truly unexplainable had occurred. As the day wore on, Mike, Alex, and Danny found themselves huddled together, separated from their usual social circle. The experience that had terrified them the night before now served to isolate them from their peers. "They don't get it," Alex muttered, kicking at the ground. "They weren't there. They didn't see what we saw." Mike nodded, and a determined look crossed his face. "Then we'll have to prove it to them." That evening, fueled by a mixture of frustration and curiosity, the 3 friends gathered in Mike's basement. They pulled out their laptops and began searching for any information that they could find about similar sightings in Benzie County. To their surprise, they quickly discovered they weren't alone in their experience. Reports of a creature known as the Michigan Dogman peppered local folklore and online forums. People from all over the state had encountered something similar, a large dog-like beast that walked on 2 legs. And they dug deeper, and they found stories that dated back decades, some eerily similar to their own experience. The more they read, the more convinced they became that what they'd seen was real. "We have to go back. Maybe next summer, but we have to go back," Danny said suddenly, looking up from his screen. The others stared at him, a mix of fear and excitement in their eyes. "Are you crazy?" Alex asked, but there was a hint of curiosity in his voice. Mike nodded slowly. "Danny's right. If we want answers, if we want to prove that what we saw was real, we need to go back. But this time, we'll be prepared." As the night wore on, their fear transformed into something else, a quest for truth. They began to plan, discussing what equipment they'd need when they could return to Benzie County, and how they could gather evidence of the creature's existence. As Mike, Alex, and Danny dove deeper into the research, they realized their terrifying encounter was far from unique. The creature that they'd seen in Benzie County had a name, the Michigan Dogman, and its legend stretches back over a century. The teens huddled around Mike's laptop, scrolling through countless reports and eyewitness accounts. "Look at this," Alex said, pointed to the screen. "It says here that the Dogman is supposed to be 8 feet tall, with blue or amber eyes." Danny leaned in closer. "And it's described as having a man's body, but a dog's head." "That's exactly what we saw." The more they read, the more their fear mixed with fascination. The Michigan Dogman wasn't just a random monster sighting. It was deeply rooted in local folklore, with a history as rich as it was mysterious. "Guys, check this out," Mike said, his voice hushed. The first reported encounter was way back in 1887. 2 lumberjacks in Wexford County claimed they saw a creature with a man's body and a dog's head. Alex shuddered. "That's over 130 years old. How is that possible?" The reports didn't stop there. As they dug deeper, they found story after story of encounters spanning decades. One account particularly caught their attention. "Listen to this," Danny read aloud. "In 1937, a guy named Robert Fortney was attacked by a group of wild dogs in Parrish, Michigan. But get this, he said one of the dogs walked on 2 legs." The room fell silent as they absorbed this information. Their encounter suddenly felt more real, more validated. They weren't alone in what they'd seen. The questions piled up faster than what they could find answers for. But one thing was clear. The Michigan Dogman was more than just a campfire story. It was a persistent legend, one that had haunted the forests of Michigan for generations. As they continued to read, they found connections to other legends. Some researchers linked the Michigan Dogman to a similar creature in Wisconsin, known as the Beast of Bray Road. It seemed the more they learned, the more complex the mystery became. The teens looked at each other, a mix of excitement and apprehension in their eyes. They'd started this research hoping to make sense of their terrifying experience. Instead, they'd uncovered a world of unexplained phenomena right in their own backyard. "So what do we do now?" Danny asked, breaking the silence. Mike closed the laptop, a determined look on his face. "We go back, not next summer, but in a week. We find proof. We show everyone that the Michigan Dogman is real." Little did they know, their quest for answers was about to lead them into an adventure far more dangerous than they could have imagined. The Michigan Dogman wasn't just a legend. It was out there, waiting in the shadows of the forest. What would you do if you encountered something that shouldn't exist? For Mike, Alex, and Danny, running away wasn't enough. They needed answers. After their terrifying encounter with the Michigan Dogman, the teens couldn't shake the feeling that they'd stumbled upon something extraordinary. Their friends' dismissal only fueled their determination to uncover the truth. They knew that they had to go back to Benzie County. This time they'd be prepared. The decision to return wasn't an easy one. Fear still lingered in their minds, the memory of that massive silhouette etched into their nightmares. But curiosity and the need for validation overpowered their apprehension. They spent days planning their return, each detail carefully considered. "We need to be smart about this," Mike said, spreading a map of Benzie County across the bedroom floor. "We can't just go in blind like last time." Alex nodded, adding, "Yeah, and we need real proof, solid evidence that we can show people." They made lists of equipment that they needed: high-powered flashlights, night vision cameras, audio recorders, and Mike's shotgun, of course. Danny even suggested bringing along some plaster of Paris to make casts of any tracks that they might find. Far cry from any previous casual camping trip. As the day of the return approached, a mix of emotions swirled within the group. Excitement buzzed alongside an undercurrent of fear. What if they actually found the Dogman again? What if it found them? I keep telling myself we're crazy for doing this, Alex admitted the night before they left. But then I remember what we saw, and I know we have to go back. The drive back to Benzie County was tense. Each mile brought them closer to the site of their terrifying encounter. They retraced their steps, setting up camp in the same clearing where they had first heard the eerie howl. As night fell, they huddled around their equipment, senses on high alert. Every snapping twig, every rustling leaf sent their hearts racing. They took turns keeping watch, cameras at the ready. Hours passed, with no sign of the Dogman. Doubt began to creep in. Had it all been in their imagination, after all? Just as they were about to call it a night, at around 3 a.m., a low growl echoed through the trees. The teens froze, eyes wide in the darkness. Something was moving just beyond the edge of their campsite. Danny fumbled with the night vision camera, his hand shaking as he pointed it towards the sound. For a moment, nothing. Then a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the viewfinder. "Guys," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "I think we found it." The creature stepped into view, its form unmistakable even in the grainy green image of the night vision. It was the Dogman, just as they remembered it. A dog-like head, a human-like body, standing upright on two legs. Mike grabbed the audio recorder, his voice trembling as he described what they were seeing. Alex, meanwhile, was frantically snapping photos with a digital camera. For several heart-stopping minutes, the Dogman sniffed the surrounding air and slowly turned its head towards them. It observed them from the edge of the clearing, amber eyes glowing in the moonlight. Suddenly, with a sudden terrifying snarl, the Dogman charged them. "Run!" Mike shouted, yanking out his shotgun. The teens scattered, adrenaline pumping through their veins. Mike aimed and fired into its face, the deafening blast echoing through the forest. The Dogman skidded to a halt, screaming beyond belief, before retreating back into the darkness. "Move now," Mike urged, reloading his gun as they grabbed their gear and fled to the car. They didn't stop until they were safely inside, the engine roaring to life as they sped away from the campsite. As they drove home, a new question nagged at them. Now that they had proof, what would they do with it? Little did they know their quest for truth was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Once home, they eagerly reviewed the footage, only to find their excitement deflate. Getting images proved to be more complex than their first hope. The grainy green-tinted images were too ambiguous, showing only vague shapes and blurry movements. They knew skeptics would dismiss it as a trick of light or a misidentified animal. However, the audio recordings were a different story. The growls and the howls were unmistakable, bone-chilling and unmistakably not from any known animal. While they lacked the visual proof that they had hoped for, the vocal evidence was undeniable. Though they were disappointed, the clear audio recordings gave them a glimmer of hope. Their journey to uncover the truth about the Dogman was far from over. They would need to return to Benzie County again, better prepared and more determined than ever. As the teens fled from the terrifying encounter, they couldn't have known they were about to embark on a journey that would challenge everything they thought they knew. Their experience in Benzie County wasn't unique. For over a century, stories of the Michigan Dogman have persisted, passed down through generations, and whispered around campfires. The question remains, is the Dogman real or just a myth? The sheer number of sightings is hard to ignore. From the lumberjacks in 1887 to Robert Fortney's encounter in 1937 and countless reports since, something seems to be lurking in the forests of Michigan. But what exactly is it? An undiscovered species? A supernatural entity? or a simple product of an overreactive imagination. The truth may be more complex than we realize. As long as the forests of Michigan keep the secrets, the legend of the Dogman will continue to haunt us, reminding us that some cryptic mysteries remain unsolved for now.